My name is Marcus Brown of ChestFrog Farms. I am here today speaking about education through a show called ChestFrog OmniVersity. Why am I speaking about education? Because education is one of those critical things in our country that measures us up against other countries. They talk about people's militaries, they talk about people's health standards. What we really need to be talking about in this country right now is the educational standard. We hear horror stories coming out of schools every day about teachers doing things they shouldn't be doing, or children not passing, or kids being left behind, quote unquote, to grab a phrase from the past, a piece of rhetoric from the past. But today I want to talk about what should education look like in the 21st century. When education originated in this country, you had the common school movement that kind of pushed a lot of ethnic minorities into a situation where they're being assimilated into American culture. What does that mean in a nutshell? The powers that be got scared that a lot of these Irish immigrants, Italian immigrants, and others would adhere to the words and the teachings and the beliefs of the Pope beyond that of the President of the United States or beyond those founding principles of the United States. So you had a situation where the government and most municipalities, most states, started educational programs to make sure that kids were being assimilated and could get basic literacy and basic skills that would help them push forward. If you look at our calendar for schools, you'll see that kids have summers off and other holidays off that match up with a farmer's schedule. Time when the farmer needs most help is during that planting season and during the summer when there's a lot going on with the crops. School starts around August. I'm sorry, school used to start in September after most of the harvesting had been set up and so forth. So it tells you what priorities our schools have by the model on which the calendar they use. They get all the snow days off because, again, they're going to be needed on the farm. Schools in America changed quite a bit around the turn of the century because you had social workers appear on the scene and you also had kids being pulled from the factories. You got to remember, in this country and with industry, you literally had children working in very dangerous situations in factories, losing arms, losing fingers, and so forth, and even dying sometimes because the work there was no OSHA back then, no safety regulations, so kids caught the brunt of it. There was a movement to make school compulsory, meaning that it was mandated by law until the age of 16. And right now, we're seeing a lot of kids drop out of school at or around that age, or don't return to school after the ninth grade, or don't feel the level of success that they should.
So, question before you keep going, I have a question. What gives you any kind of authority or even foundation to speak on this subject matter? What kind of background do you have in order to have to speak on what you're speaking on?
Very valid question, sir. I am an educator. I have taught for over 20 years. I've been a principal in the Lansing School District. I've been a teacher in the Lansing School District. I've also worked in charter schools when I was first getting started. I worked a little bit, volunteered a little bit at the Malcolm X Academy down in Detroit, and I've been involved with all aspects of education. At one point in time, I was working on my doctorate and teaching curriculum and ed policy, but that's a whole nother story that we won't delve too deep in. I consider myself as a parent of children who attended schools and as a person who previously attended schools myself, not to be so much an expert, but to have a righteous opinion. And I think that anyone who's ever gone to school or has a thought about education, I want you to chime in on our Facebook. Are we using Facebook?
Yeah, we're on Facebook.
We're on Facebook right now. Chime in and ask questions, or if you feel that something that I'm saying is not valid, please. That's what makes America great. Have being able to have different opinions about different things. I might not be totally right
So
about.
you want people to challenge everything you're saying so you can have the dialogue in order to put a foundation on what's being said, correct?
I like the way he articulated himself. Ladies and gentlemen, that's my co-host here, Mr. G.F. Grundy. Want to introduce yourself, sir?
Second, hey, this is Out of Mud Media, produced by Out of Mud Media and distributed by Out of Mud Media and Flint After Dark Podcast. This is Georgia Grundy II, your favorite veteran. Peace. Back to Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I appreciate him allowing us to have this moment to discuss this because it's a very important issue, and it's one of the issues that's being glossed over during this presidential election year. All they're talking about is whether or not this guy should go to jail or how his trial is going, or a lot of other stuff is taking attention away from where it should be. We should be looking at the impact that COVID had on our children and our children's education. A lot of people are saying that COVID put kids back at least a year in most situations. What is your opinion on that? There's a
Mine?
lot.
Oh,
Yes,
you
sir.
talking about the audience.
Audience and you, sir.
My opinion on COVID is COVID destroyed the school system construct uh, because parents found out that they can educate their children just as much as the school system can, and they had to adapt and learn because a parent that loves their children, they're not going to allow their children to fail or to fall behind according to what they think the standard is. So uh, there were, in my opinion, three different tiers of child progression or digression. So those that fall in a category of being in a economically disadvantaged situation, the kids
Mm-hmm.
didn't get the opportunity to move forward, but they got an opportunity to learn what the real life was about. So they adjusted and saying, "Hey, oh, life is about making money because this is what my parents are doing. So let me go out here and figure out how to get money at McDonald's or at Burger King or whatever food chain or whatever side job they could do, working on mechanical work on vehicles, whatever they could figure out in order to actually function in society as an everyday, day-to-day situation. Because one thing that happened is children aren't going to be mandated to stay inside just because anybody tells them to. Just because they're not going to be afraid to breathe and live, so they explore. Then when they find out that this is a Alice in Wonderland or a Wizard of Oz situation where there's a man, there's something behind the curtain trying to control, then they say, look, y'all full of it, and we about to go live how we gonna live and figure it out. But without proper guidance, those youth don't get to advance at their highest potential. Then you have the parents that have the ability to properly put their children in a structure to where
And
they
have
can
resources.
to keep the learning going
Mm-hmm.
in that traditional or that conservative way. Not saying it's the best way or the worst way, but it's a way that when according to the system as it goes forward, they'll be able to get the jobs or the positions or the careers that will pay the most, that will then hire or control or be over the kids that didn't have the economic basis. But it's a new system. It's a new way. The school system failed itself by not preparing for something like this. And so the parents and young adults and kids are resilient. They figured out and they find out how to survive regardless of what happens.
I think that when we look at the history of education in America, that COVID is going to be marked as one of those pivotal things that changed education or has the potential to change education for the positive. We look at compulsory education being started at the turn of the century. We look at the Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954, and it's a weird oddity. I did not go to school with any white children, Latino children, all through my elementary, all through my middle school, but my father did in the city of Detroit. So you almost had a reverse effect when white flight took place, and you still have schools segregated to this day. They might not be segregated at the level they were before, but there are schools that are currently some schools might surprise you that are currently under a federal mandate to desegregate and have not been able to. It's one of those things that goes back to race and certain issues. I used to love teaching, and I still love teaching, but under the current system, there's too much racism, sexism, and elitism built into the system for it to really do our children as much benefit as it does other children. When you look at education and see that it's funded through this process or that process, you see a system where kids in the city, 9 times out of 10, are not being funded at the same rate as kids out in rural areas or areas with higher property taxes. Boo hoo, aha. A lot of people would say, let them go to a charter school, let them use schools of choice. But there's a lot of convoluted, hidden issues when you start talking about charter schools and how they might be potentially taking even more money from the public school system. But there's a lot of different things to handle and tackle with this issue called education. I want to focus on what is being taught and not necessarily on just the funding of education. It used to be a long time ago that a rich man would hire tutors for his child in order for them to have an education. He wanted his child to learn French. He'd hire someone who spoke French. He wanted his child to become a doctor or a lawyer. He would get him an assistantship or an internship working under a doctor or a lawyer. But before then, that parent who was wealthy would make sure that that child had an understanding of math, could take over the family business, could speak certain languages, or do whatever. That was the early educational system in this country. It was pretty much managed by the parent themselves. What happened? Common schools came along, public education came along, schools that were built just for the rich, where you could send your child to boarding school, came along. You had the advent of Catholic schools when some of the people here in this country started saying, hey, I'm not liking what they're teaching my child or the assimilation that's going on inside those public schools. So you had the advent of Catholic schools. There's been a lot of interesting things that happened with the history of school, but the most dangerous thing that I think is going on right now has to do with curriculum. We teach kids facts and expect them to regurgitate those facts back. Kid with a great memory, you got ace through school. You got the A, B, C, D, E of school, which says A, you're going to college. B, you might be in upper management. C, you might be able to hold a decent job with some advancement. D, you're going to have difficulty keeping a job. E, you're going to jail. Whoa, that's extreme. But in reality, they base the number of prison beds on fourth grade reading scores. They say if a kid isn't able to read by the fourth grade, we're going to prepare a bed for them, which goes into the school to prison pipeline. I say that it goes deeper than that because the stuff that we're teaching is basically making our kids slaves. We have lost that interest in creativity. We have not forced the issue of critical thinking, and things have changed. When back in the days when I went to school, oh yeah, back in the Stone Age, well, not quite that far, we had.
So let me interrupt you real quick. So going back to the grades and the standards, what kind of student were you? What kind of grades did you get? And based on what you just said, how did you turn out according to your grades?
Well, elementary school, I was a straight A student. Middle school, straight A student in elementary. My teacher wanted me to go to a magnet school or a school for kids that are doing exceptionally well. I was already taking the PSATs and other standardized tests and blowing the doors off of them. I went to a gladiator school called Durfee in Detroit, right next to Central, for middle school. And I got into fights.
What's a gladiator school?
It's kind of like getting you ready for jail or prison, or you have to fight there every day, and there's a lack of resources. There's crime abundant. all the symptoms of poverty and so forth, things going on at the school that should not be going on, teen pregnancy, you name it, whatever social ill you can think of that can be in a school, they had it. Now, I finished up middle school and I got very good grades on most standardized tests and on most academic classes. So I went to a school called Cass Tech in Detroit, which is a magnet, and a lot of prestigious people have gone there. You can look up Cass Tech yourself and see some amazing numbers where you have like almost a 98% graduation rate, and the 2% that don't graduate have been pulled into some other programming or something like that, or have been picked up by IBM or Dow Chemical or whatever. But going back a little bit, digressing a little bit about what's missing from education. When I went to school, even if it was a gladiator school, we had spelling bees, we had science fairs, we had plays, we had other activities built into the school that took into account that critical thinking and that creative thinking. The new password right now is STEM. Everybody wants to be a STEM school. It's like branding. It's like all new flavor or with Wave Patrol 3. It's something that they throw out there these days in order to keep parents from going to a different school or from doing homeschooling. And homeschooling, like Mr. Grundy said, has become more of an option when parents saw that they could do the homeschooling during COVID. One thing that COVID did do for us is it created a situation where kids were actually using technology if their neighborhood had the internet or if their neighborhood had the internet strength. Again, we go to the haves and the have nots. Some suburbs might have more of this than sometimes the city has as far as access to the internet or good quality internet that doesn't fail or can carry that load with every child going on at the same time to the same channel. I'm thinking that we need to look at education and do some major changes. And I'm talking about revolutionary changes. We already had certain things that worked, but now we're creating these people who are not prepared or ready for the world. We have people that are not learning about what their rights are in the social studies classes, not learning what true science is. You have people asking some silly questions during the COVID time. Well, if I don't wear the mask on my nose, I mean, common sense or school sense will teach you, yes, you have to wear the mask over your nose for it to be effective. So we have a lot of things going on in our society right now that could be cured if people get the right education. But what is the right education? How do we describe that? What does it look like in the 21st century? We
So,
have.
so before you go to, even further, I want to go on my experience of my education experience because I was a great student, but as a character wise, but scholastically, I was horrible. So based on my scores, based on what I received in school, I'm not supposed to be doing anything. Just I'm supposed to be just accepting whatever the world gives me. Um,
Well, you also had to take advantage of something else, though. You took advantage of the military, which is a form of education. Some people go to college.
but I didn't do that until I was 29. So I had already lived in life and whatever decisions I was going to make, good, bad, or indifferent,
Mm-hmm.
those things that came. So going back to the school situation, I I always felt behind. You know, I never felt. And it wasn't a feeling. I was always behind. I was
Mm-hmm.
great. I was great at retaining what I could and taking tests, but paperwork and all the other stuff, just like now, was a torture for me. And, you know, it's even more so now after the military because it's like some things got lost in translation after the different things that I dealt with in the military. But I'm saying all that to say that the education system that we have did not support the type of student that I was. I had great teachers, great educators, people that cared, but it the style of learning, the way that they wanted me to learn, it was not conducive to me being the best that I could have been. And it was very frustrating. Was very reserved because I didn't feel uh, like I met the standard of intelligence that people wanted, even though in a like a debate or on just gathering information, I could tear apart most people even back then because the way that I absorbed information.
Right.
You know, so the system is just that. You know, there's a certain amount of acceptable losses, and I was one of those acceptable losses.
But should it be like that?
No,
I,
no.
I taught for over 20 years, and you can almost see there's this, children naturally learn. The best time to teach a child languages is when the younger they are, the better. The best time to teach them music or anything of that nature is when they're very young. It's really sad and depressing when you actually see that desire to learn leave a child, and it usually happens around the fourth and fifth grade, where the child realizes or comes to an understanding that I'm not succeeding as well as I want to. This isn't enjoyable anymore. We have to make that education something they want to consume. We have to put it in a form, whether we use technology, whether we use games, whether we use songs, whether we use creative personalities in the teachers, to make sure that kids are taking an interest in what is being taught. We leave some kids behind because of this ABCD system. Why is it that a child has to fail? We almost create a system where there's an expectation of failure. Not everybody can get an A. Why not? If we teach something well enough, if a teacher is good enough, why can't everybody get an A? The problem is we live inside of a capitalistic society, and if everybody got an A, you're going to have a war about who's going to start digging those ditches and flipping those burgers. So it behooves the current system to have failure, just like it behooves some people to have prisoners inside the prisons. People are getting paid for that. So we have a system that actually might be manipulating and exploiting these children just like a factory in order to grade and sort them. Which kids are going to college, which kids are going to be digging that ditch for you. I don't think that's very fair, especially when you realize more resources go to those suburban kids, or more resources go to certain schools and not others. So you have an imbalanced system. I highly recommend a book by Jonathan Kozol called Savage Inequalities. And I also recommend a book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire as books to start thinking about change. Paulo Freire isn't very popular in America because he's a socialist. Don't let the Republicans find out. So
So when you're talking about change, what exact change are you saying? So what right now you go into a school here in Flint, what do you change in order to increase the value of learning and the potential of the children today?
well, first off, we have a problem in that we herd kids like cattle. Oh, this kid is 5 years old. We're putting him in kindergarten. This kid is 6 years old. He belongs in first grade. This kid is 7 years old. He belongs in second grade. Why are we herding children like cattle to learn things? Children learn at different rates and in different ways. You have some kids that are mathematically inclined. You have some kids that are literal or more inclined towards reading or other experience. You got some kids that love science but might not do too well with music, and vice versa. You have all these beautiful children that have come to learn, and we shove one curriculum down their throat, and that curriculum, eventually, the way it's designed, makes some of them feel like failures because we are expecting failures with this curriculum.
What's the alternative to what you're saying?
The alternative that I would suggest is departmentalizing schools. What does that mean? Instead of being with the same teacher all day long, you switch classes and have experts in math, or experts in literacy, or experts in music teaching you that specific subject. Kids rotate just like they do in high school. Why and how does this change things? because when you do that, you have the ability to individualize a child's education. If a child has great reading skills and is very literate, go ahead and let him float with the second graders. If he's a kindergartner and he doesn't know his numbers, but he knows all his letters, then put him in two different classes for those things. If he needs remedial math, we give them remedial math, but we make them feel like a star where they are a star.
So what it sounds like to me is similar to the different things I hear about the farm or the company, or with the three-letter organizations with the FBI, CIA, NSA, and things. So everybody has a standard of interest or education, but then when they take these tests, they specify the specifics so they can get those strengths heightened. So like if you're good at math or calculating or strategy, then that's what they're going to train you on or send you on in order to strengthen that. If you're good at being a spy, then they're going to give you more training on those things. So you're saying whatever the strength is of the child after they have different tests or
An evaluation. Let's call it an evaluation.
Different evaluations. Then you put them in programming that will help them enhance the things that they're already strong in.
I would say put them in right now we call it grade levels. The system that I'm advocating for, it wouldn't be called grade levels. It'd just be a more advanced class. A more advanced class for those advanced readers. Less difficult class for people that need remediation, with the goal of putting them up with their peers. It's more along the lines of, if I took a whole classroom of kids to the hospital and I gave them all a shot of insulin, more than likely I'm going to kill most of those kids. If hospitals and schools worked alike, if hospitals and schools worked alike, then the schools are basically killing these kids. What we need to do is individualize the education, just like we individualize medication for children. Not every child needs insulin. Not every child needs, what do you call it, ADHD drugs?
Right.
Not every child needs the same thing medically. And I'm saying that education-wise, not every child needs to be put inside the same program, creating these little automaton bricks in the wall. These little, you shove them inside of a square muffin basket and they bake up into a square loaf of bread. What if that child wants to be a triangle? What if that child wants to be a circle? We're not providing for that. But just like hospitals can individualize each and every patient that comes in, it's possible to individualize the education for every child in America. It sounds like a worrisome task, but basically that's what teachers do right now, is they try and individualize the scores or the evaluation of kids. Wouldn't it be better if we had reading teacher A in a classroom with kids who are all on the same reading level and can have a true discussion about what's being read? We teach kids how to read, but we don't teach kids how to discuss the things that they're reading. And if you get into a deeper discussion, then you're developing critical thought. We're leaving out that critical component, we're leaving out that creative component, and we're leaving these kids behind because we're just forcing them inside of a factory like so many lumps of wood or clay to be molded into what the district says, this is an accomplished 12th grader who deserves this certificate. But we're not molding that child to take advantage of their specific needs. Every now and then we get that gifted child that wins the spelling bee or that does this, that, and other thing and gets a scholarship, but we're not doing that for enough of our children. Plenty of kids can succeed if we find the area and the way to make them succeed. It's not just a song, but every child has a gift and every child has potential. When we put them through the school system that we currently have, we have kids that feel like they are failures. And I think that's the worst crime that the school system currently does, is that it doesn't find a way of making every child feel like they are successful at something. Even if it's just at gym, even if it's just at music, even if it's just at certain things that standardized tests can't evaluate. And I'm going to say this right here. Standardized tests are the most dangerous thing out there because we're trying to evaluate kids and put them all on the same level again or same abilities. We're valuing a certain type of learning and it's not valuing other learning. Can you standardize the value of a drawing? Can you standardize the value of a poem? Can you standardize the ability of a child to sing? Or can you standardize the ability of a child to play basketball? And I'm valuing all these skills and talents and saying that there are multiple intelligences, but we're only valuing certain intelligences.
So, question:
Yes, sir.
where is there an example of what you're saying being done right now in the country or the world? What system is working based on what you're presenting? Um, and
I
does it exist, or is it something that you would have to create a process for?
I had the blessing and opportunity of working at a school called Sankofa Shule back in the 90s. Sankofa space Shule. Please look it up. There are YouTube videos that show how amazing these kids were. We had kids in the fifth grade learning calculus and trigonometry. We had the whole school learning multiple foreign languages. They weren't just learning Spanish, they were also learning French, Japanese, Kiswahili. So these kids are learning multiple languages, they're learning advanced mathematics, and the way that we did it was that we processed the kids individually and say, wow, you're pretty good at math. We're going to shoot you up to this class over here that's doing trigonometry. Wow, you're pretty good in science. We're going to put you over here with this class that's doing these types of experiments. So it's possible. But let me say this first. The number one most important and most critical thing in a child's education is that child himself. Number two is the parents. And the parents will see a gift in their child, or the parents will see certain abilities in their child, and the parents are already doing this, and they're saying, "Hey, my child is pretty good with this. I'm going to get him some more books that deal with art or deal with music, or I'm going to get this kid a guitar or piano lessons or dance lessons." So parents are doing this subconsciously because it's the best way to raise a child and the best way to teach a child. For some reason, schools don't do this. We're treating these kids just like so much fodder for the future fires that are coming, or the future wars that are coming, or the future job market that's coming. And some of these kids are already predestined, not predestined, but already being slotted for prison beds. How many prison beds will we need in 10 years? Let's look at those fourth grade reading scores. So it's possible to do this, but we have to be willing to let go of that traditional rote form of education. 1 times 1 equals 1, 2 times 1 equals 2, where we're boring the daylights out of these kids and losing these kids. If we keep them interested, if we make it fun, if we make it stimulating in some way, the kids will learn. When I was coming up, there was something called Schoolhouse Rock, and I was able to use Schoolhouse Rock all the way through college. Knowing the preamble, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, I learned that backwards and forwards just by watching a cartoon. Now I give credit to public television for creating things like Sesame Street and the Electric Company and these other educational things, but there are ways, especially today with the technology out there, to catch every child's interest. I might not be the teacher that makes this child click with math, but there might be a different teacher that we can pull up online from YouTube or Khan Academy or from anywhere that might be able to make it click and make it work for a child. Not everybody, and I don't put myself down to the teacher because I'm open to a lot of different things, but sometimes it might just take a different voice or someone that might look more like the child or something else in order to make this child take a greater interest in the subject. There are ways of motivating kids in order to get them to learn. There are ways of teaching a subject that makes it easier to learn. when we start talking about music and singing and creating games, I mean, Monopoly is a great game to teach banking. Chess is a great game for teaching critical thought, planning, looking ahead. You even have some aspects of geometry in chess. There's so much that we could be doing differently, and it's not always about, well, we got to throw more money at it. We literally had rocks and stones, using them as manipulatives, drawing chess pieces on a stone, and then having the kids make their own chessboards out of a piece of wood, scrap wood, and some paint. So we are integrating arts and everything else, and the poverty of the situation, and saying, hey, this means that we have to become more creative, and that's what the key is. I tried going to the school district during COVID and said, hey, why don't we record some of these lessons that are being presented? So in case a kid misses school next year, or in case the next COVID happens, we have a whole bank of lessons. And if you got that going on in a few school districts, you'll be able to pick out, this is a superb lesson, this is a superb lesson by this teacher, bam, bam, bam. All of a sudden, you got all 12 school years videotaped, and the kid just has to hit the play button. If they're out sick or if they miss a day in class, then they're not trying to play catch up. And that's where a lot of kids start to fall and stumble. A lot of the education that's done now is scaffolded, which means you can't learn how to divide until you multiply. You can't learn how to subtract until you can add. And if you missed a day when they went over regrouping, then you might have problems with regrouping for the rest of your life because nobody took the time to explain it to you one on one. And it's not your fault that you were out of school one day sick. But it would have been really cool if you could turn on a TV set, hit a channel on your computer or whatever, and catch the day's lessons. Wouldn't it be great if if some classrooms had cameras in it? So if a kid misses school, he can go on and say, hey, I'm watching my class live. Or I can go through the library of assignments and find this lesson taught by two different teachers so I can make sure I get it. This innovation will not cost anything because the cameras are already there, the computers are already there. Most kids already went through this with COVID. It's about allowing the access to this and backing the idea that teachers can generate educational media.
So, why aren't you in the fight pushing this initiative that you're speaking of right now? What is it that's keeping you from saying, "Hey, I'm going to run for school council or something or whatever, or school board in order to try to implement or become get some position in an education system somewhere in this community in order to try to implement some of the things you're saying, or either find funding for yourself to do it yourself?"
I had a grandson that attended schools in this district, and while my grandson was attending school in this district, my wife and I were Parent of the Year repeatedly because of my support for the schools or my efforts in trying to help with schools. I have spoken with multiple assistant superintendents in this district, multiple teachers. A lot of people agree with all the ideas I'm saying, but some of them are politicians who are forced to just deal with the status quo. And if you start trying to change things, oh, the union's not going to go for it. Oh, this person's not going to go for it. How much are they going to get paid for doing these recordings? The system will balance itself out. If there's a teacher out there who does an excellent job presenting math, YouTube will pay that teacher after so many thousands of views. Just like the YouTube is monetized right now, we can start monetizing it so these teachers can get paid more. There's no way in this country that we should be putting a higher priority. And I'm not saying that the job of a prison guard isn't hard, but there's no way that teachers should be getting paid substantially less and have less benefits and should have to worry about how they're going to retire or how they're going to afford a car when they're buying school supplies for kids inside their classroom. Why am I not in a leadership position right now in education? I opted to leave education out of frustration. You can only bang your head up against the wall so many times. When I was teaching in Lansing, I wasn't getting paid to teach chess. I wasn't getting paid to teach guitar. I wasn't getting paid to do games at lunch or art at lunch or do before school and after school. But I volunteered and did this for free. I had some of the highest test scores in the building. And sometimes I get an administrator who's never taught a class saying, hey, that doesn't look like the curriculum. And I'm like, well, it might not look like the curriculum, but the kids are learning and they have some of the highest scores in the building. So there must be some type of magic to adding all this creativity and art into it. And the magic is kids are gravitated towards that. Kids love to play games. They love music. They love to interact with each other. And it's only natural for them to learn. We make learning unnatural by making it into a competitive sport where they have to get that A in order to make it to this college or to this university. What if?
So why was there an issue with the administrators or anybody if you had some of the highest test scores in the building? Why was there a problem with what you were doing?
I honestly think that there are people out there that don't want education to change, that want to maintain the status quo, and don't want to have their kids have to compete against our kids when it comes to that college market, when it comes to that job market. And I don't want to talk. I don't want to get into affirmative action or anything else like that. But there are
Why
people.
not?
Well, it links in with that. Some people say, "Ah, he's talking affirmative action. He's talking about putting kids up higher than where they belong." No, I'm not. I'm talking about successful kids who have had less resources, who didn't have access to microscopes or new books, or might have had a school that had paint peeling off the walls and asbestos, who might not have had the best, are competing anyway with kids who have had the best. And sometimes when you have the best, you take it for granted. Sometimes when you have less than others, you make do and make things happen, make that magic happen.
Now, speaking on affirmative action, what are your viewpoints on how it has been overturned and changed and attacked in so many different ways, and especially with the diversity and inclusion parts of it also?
I think affirmative action is one of those American jokes. It's hypocrisy at its best. The people that benefited the most from affirmative action were white females. They are the ones socially who advanced, career-wise who advanced, who took advantage of most of those positions that were offered. There's a stereotype that affirmative action only helped out black people or Latinos or helped out some minorities. But you got to remember that when the women's rights movement was in high action, that part of the things that women were requesting was access to these jobs. And I'm not saying that they should not have had access to it, but in America, the people that benefited most from affirmative action were white females, more than black women, more than African American men, or any other group that you might want to name out there.
So why is it such an attack on affirmative action now, being that the beneficiaries of that were not black or minorities in the sense of colored people?
Affirmative action has become a knee-jerk term that inspires racial thoughts and envy and malice. It's just one of those terms like Jim Crow or certain other words that you can say that will ignite certain feelings in people. And most people, because of the education that we're receiving right now, don't have the understanding of what affirmative action really was and what it was really trying to do. I think that that's the biggest thing about the educational system right now. Are we really educating people to be full citizens in America if we're not teaching them their rights, if we're not teaching them true history? There's a movement out there right now not to teach cultural history, not to teach what happened to the Native Americans, or not to teach slavery, or not to teach what really happened in this country. And I want you to think about, who does that really benefit? Does it benefit the Native American or the African American? Who does it benefit when we don't teach the true history of this country?
Oh,
It doesn't benefit my children or Native American children. It benefits the psyche of the children of those who ran this country, those people that were slave owners, those people that did rape and murder and pillage in order to build this country. That's who it benefits. I mean, we don't like to think about our mothers being raped as slaves, but I'm quite sure they don't like to think about their fathers being rapists or murderers. It's one of those things, and I know that they'll using those terms, rape and sexual, supposed to say SA or use some kind of rhyming word these days because they're starting to edit the internet where you can't use certain language on the internet. Isn't that hilarious? And another form of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is the greatest luxury. It's what you can do and get away with it. And that's kind of what America is steadily becoming. The more money you got, the more you can get away with. It doesn't matter what type of healthcare system we put in place. If you're wealthy, you're going to get the best care. It doesn't matter what crime has been committed. If you're wealthy, you can pay for your way out of that trouble. It's rare and recent that people are starting to get hemmed up for things that they just threw money at, and it's still possible to throw money at. You look at the trials and tribulations of this election and recent elections, and it's more about who's talking the loudest and who has the most money to spend than anything else. There's no way that campaigning and the money that's spent on campaigning should be allowed. Yeah, people that spent over $500 million on a campaign. You can literally almost pay people to make sure they vote for you. So there's a backwardsness, there's a brokenness in the current system, and it needs to be repaired. Hopefully, it won't take an outright revolution and in the streets in order to make that happen. But you got certain things going on right now in America at Yale and at Harvard where students are not going with the status quo and not going with, well, we're told to believe this and we're told to support that. But no, I can't agree with my tax money being used to bomb these people or whatever. And you've had turnovers recently of head administration, presidents of universities leaving, and students starting to stand up and say, "Hey, we're not going for the status quo. We're not going with the CNN version or the Fox version." It's kind of sad that you can turn to a channel and get the flavor of news that you want. PBS used to do a pretty good job of giving a fair and honest, balanced story, but it's just so sad the media outlets that claim to be media outlets are so slanted one way or another. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. We have a lot of things going on in this country right now that's really scary. AI is getting scary. If you think about AI being able to take jobs in the future, people were scared of robots in the 80s. We better be scared of AI in the future because AI might take over that creative and critical thinking that we're not providing to these children. Do we have any questions from the Facebook audience or anybody got
nobody
comments?
has submitted any questions.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I think that when it comes down to it, the best thing that parents can do is be involved in their child's education. The best thing that a child could do is believe in themselves and set a goal for themselves where they say, I am going to reach this. And I honestly believe that if a child works hard enough at whatever their goal might be, it might be to be a doctor, might be to be a rapper or a basketball player, might be to be a lawyer, whatever. I think if they work hard enough to achieve that goal, that it's possible to reach it. It's just a matter of not letting things dissuade you, like the grades that you might get. There have been plenty of cases where people got terrible grades in school and wound up turning out to be some type of genius or considered a genius. Einstein was considered by his teachers when he was very young somebody who would probably benefit from learning how to paint walls, not paint art, but paint walls and do some type of menial labor. And there's been plenty of examples of this where children are not challenged in the right way and they start to fall behind. Matter of fact, in my teaching career, I've seen waves where the good kids were the ones that got straight A's, and then I've seen waves where it was those exceptional kids who were causing the most of the trouble because they felt they weren't being challenged or they knew something was wrong or broken in the system. It takes a little effort to be that class clown or to disrupt a system that's been held together the way it is and put together in order to follow factories and so forth. If you think about the way a school looks these days compared to a factory or a prison, they look a lot alike. Maybe schools should look different in the future. Maybe the 21st century, there should be more technology. Maybe the school should be in your pocket. Maybe it should look like the Magic School Bus where a teacher takes you on experiential learning. That was another thing that was done at Sankofa Chule. Every week, every child had at least one experiential learning moment where they went to a library or a hospital or took a field trip somewhere or even took a hike out into the woods or did something that made the world more concrete and made the lessons more concrete. So it is possible to design a school. I have been trying to advocate recently for a Saturday school, and I would love to do a Saturday school for free. It's just about getting the people together and getting some type of place to do this Saturday school at. I'm willing to work with anybody and everybody because there's a lot of stuff that could be done in a Saturday school. I say I don't like the way the schools are right now. I'm suggesting let me start a Saturday school that focuses on integrating critical, creative, and core material with each other in a way that kids want to learn. Where kids will, like, some kids are like, going to school on Saturdays? Are you crazy? But if that school on Saturday allowed you to experiment and touch things and be like the Sloan Museum, or if we had them going to a farm on that Saturday or going to a hospital and seeing how things work or make it into some type of experiential learning, I think that we can change or make schools better for kids or improve their ability to learn by having some type of supplement since the money isn't going to come.
Now, the property that you live on is considered a farm, correct?
Yes, I have an 8-acre property in Flint.
And being with that, I apologize for disrupting.
No problem.
Do you have any programs or anything that you have that could be lined up for children in the summertime to help them learn different things or get some type of skill set or knowledge of nature and farming?
What I have done since I arrived in Flint is tried to deal with the food desert issue, and I've been trying to teach seniors. I'm trained as a master gardener also. I've been trying to get seniors to relearn those skills of farming, and I provide resources, whether it be soil, seeds, or actual plants, to some of the seniors in the area where they can grow their own tomatoes or grow their own peppers or their own collard greens. I would love it to have kids be able to come out there because we have access to fishing poles and we have access to the lake, and quote unquote Flint Park Lake, Devil's Lake, is a spring fed lake. That means that the water gets replenished by underground rivers and fluvials that feed the lake. So I would consider that a little bit healthier than standing water or some of the other places around. But I would love it if we could have kids come out there, learn how to play bocce ball, which you can integrate into the curriculum, or horseshoes. You start talking about ballistics and trajectory. You're starting to get into trigonometry and calculus again. I would love it if kids could play miniature golf out there or do other things like plant plants or even start their own business by planting, hey, I'm growing these special hot peppers that don't grow in Michigan, or I'm growing these hot peppers that I can sell at the farmer's market. There's so many things that we could do, but I'm only one person. I'm providing the resource. If people want to come out and pick some cherries with their kids, they're welcome to do that. If they want to come out and learn how to plant with their kids, they're welcome to do that. I would not turn a parent and child away. So that resource exists in Flint, and I'm open to people coming with me to help organize something that will have a structure and that will have some type of ability to benefit all the children and people of Flint. Yeah.
Now again, I don't recall if you said it. What type of trees or plants and things do you grow on your farm? What do you have that you harvest pretty much every year?
Right now, we have three greenhouses on the farm, and we grow a lot of traditional, quote unquote, soul food items and a lot of traditional Americanized items, whether it be onions and collard greens, hot peppers and tomatoes, different herbs and spices, basil, uh, green onions. We whatever's available and that's part of a diet, we try and grow it on the farm, whether it be cucumbers, pumpkins, watermelons, whatever. But what we have also on the farm is a number of fruit trees. We have peach, nectarine, apple, different varieties of cherries, different varieties of apples, pear, uh, blackberries. My blueberries have not been successful yet, but I think that this year they might do better than they did last year. We also have raspberries growing there. So we have a number of different things that we're growing there, and I'm open to ideas because I want to start putting art on the property also and making use of the art in a functional way, whether it be making that art into a fountain that feeds the plant or digging trenches in certain ways where it'll hold water, but also be a place for plants to be planted at. I'm using a permaculture approach to farming here, where I'm not just growing a whole field of corn. I'm growing the corn with some beans and with other items that will benefit that'll have a synergistic effect. So I'm into some innovative stuff. I would love to see some solar panels get put out there, and I'm working on that. But I'm trying to make this as simple and as effective and cost friendly as possible. I've had success with similar programs in Lansing where we took blighted property that belonged to the land bank and turned them into community gardens. Here in this town, the land bank is different, to say the least. And I'm not sure if they would support or if they would support the use of their fields for gardening purposes. I know that they've already come on my property and mowed down trees accidentally that they didn't want to pay full price for. They sent the check off that was a pittance, but we're not going to get into that. There is an option out there where different people can be doing different things. Again, I say the number one person in education is that child himself, believing in themselves or finding their niche if no one else is helping them find it. Number two person is that parent helping that child find their niche or find their way down the road to success as an adult. And whether that success means becoming an entrepreneur or going the traditional route of college, it's up to them. But I'll tell you this right here. Uh, I was told that education was the road to success in America. I still believe that, but sometimes going other routes might be more lucrative. If, like for instance, my brother and I we're a lot alike. He became an electrician. He made two or three times the amount of money that I made. If your goal with education is to make money, you need to research what you need to do. Sometimes college might not be the thing for you. Sometimes a training school of some sort might be the thing for you. Sometimes beauty school might be the thing. Welding, plumbing. There's so many different careers out there where kids can become their own bosses or learn a skill that will carry them through to retirement. America has changed dramatically. The number of people who are expected to own a house is going down. The size of the middle class is shrinking. There are going to be more haves and have-nots. I think it's imperative for any parent of a child right now to make sure that they're giving their kids the tools they need to succeed. And whether that tool is self-confidence or that tool is taking them to a class beyond the school district, you need to be doing something to give your child, quote unquote, the edge. And I know I'm buying into the status quo, but it's up to people to realize what's going on out there. Not everybody is going to be able to make it in the current system. The current system is based on not just success, but also failure. They want somebody to dig those ditches. Do you want your child to be digging those ditches, or do you want your child to pay somebody to dig ditches for them?
So we're gonna get ready to wrap up. Um, Going off of what you were just saying, my opinion of all of it is that infrastructure, 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 infrastructure. Education is key. College is not. You have to have an education for infrastructure. In my opinion, this is my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and what I mean by that is that it, everybody needs to use the bathroom, so they need a sewer, they need a plumber. Everyone needs a home or a apartment built, so they need a contractor or someone that knows construction or understands how to read blueprints. Everyone needs certain things, foundational things and structural things. So what you're not willing to do, someone else is. And just because that person doesn't fit your scholastic thought process does not mean that they're not making way more money than you and they're not way more important than you, because they are giving you the ability to function in foundational structure. They're giving you the ability to be comfortable, even if you don't recognize that. So you know, it, those of you that believe or feel or know that you don't have the best scholastic ability, learn a skill. Get a skill set. Don't worry about how dirty it is. Don't worry about how dangerous it is, because guess what? Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people did the job before you. Just understand that there is money behind getting those skill sets. Learn that, hold on to it, and become as successful as you can based on what your longing of success is. That's just my opinion, and I'm going to leave the last word to Mr. Brown.
As quickly as I can. America is a land of opportunity, but it's also a land of missed opportunity. If you want to succeed and you try, you possibly can, but you can also mess up. America creates the toys the rest of the world wants to play with, whether it be our music, our films, our cars, our technology. The rest of the world gobbles it up. Your child could be the one that creates that next invention, that next Facebook, that next iPhone. But we have to inspire children to want to be creative and critical, and have the self-esteem to believe in themselves. Right now, I don't see the public schools doing that, and I see an agenda out there that has kids failing. We need to change that. Everyone can succeed. There is a place for everyone, even inside of a global market where jobs are going overseas. But I welcome the opportunity to work with others. If you see me out there, hit me up. You know how to reach me.
Now, do you plan on making this a regular thing, Mr. Brown? Or are you going to create a podcast consistently so we can see you every week and
I
have
would love
dialogue?
to do that. I need to find some guests. If you are interested in being a guest, or if you want to talk with me about some of the issues here or other issues that are related to improving America, especially for kids, you can hit me up at Brown
Mr. Brown,
Marcus.
you can't go out like that. Look, Mr. Brown got other subject matter, so he is a lover of music and a certain type of music. So it's not just education, and because you're only gonna get a certain audience with the education piece.
Oh, we can kick it about music or history.
What kind of music? What kind of music? Who's your favorite band?
My favorite artist probably would be Prince.
I
Followed
said band.
band.
Yeah, band.
Parliament Funkadelic.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So,
Make my funk the P funk.
yeah.
But I also get into chess. I also get into guitar playing, and I have a lot of interests that are wide and varied. I'm a very big advocate of learning history. I do poetry and I do a lot of different things. So if you are interested in talking about whatever you're doing in Flint, or if you have a counter point of view of mine, hit me up at brownmarcus at hotmail.com. Traditional spelling, BROWNMARCUS, brownmarcus at hotmail.com. And maybe we can put a show together where we can discuss. And I love to discuss, debate, and expose an issue for the purposes of education. I want people to learn from whatever discussions go on with my podcast.
Show together, you can be a guest. All right, that's Mr. Brown. You can be a guest on his show. All right, we out.